The markets are closed, but the business stories are just heating up. Hello, I'm Raine Musñgi. Catch up with us on Newsfeed Business.
The golden age of America begins right now. From this day forward, our country will flourish and be respected again all over the world. We will be the envy of every nation, and we will not allow ourselves to be taken advantage of any longer. Our sovereignty will be reclaimed. Our safety will be restored. The scales of justice will be rebalanced. America will soon be greater, stronger, and far more exceptional than ever before.
The inauguration completes a triumphant return for a political disruptor. An emboldened Donald Trump declared the golden age of America as he reclaimed the presidency on Monday, even after being twice impeached, convicted in a criminal trial, having faced charges for attempting to overturn his 2020 election loss and surviving 2 assassination attempts. Trump is the first president in more than a century to win a second term and the first felon to occupy the White House. During his inaugural speech, the 45th and 47th President of the United States portrayed himself as a savior chosen by God to rescue a faltering nation. Trump outlined a series of sweeping executive orders he plans to sign immediately to curb immigration, boost fossil fuel production, and roll back environmental regulations. They're the first steps in enacting a far-reaching agenda that would reshape the government while testing the limits of his presidential authority. An analyst is not optimistic about Mr. Trump's capability to deliver on his promises. Walter Olson, a senior fellow at libertarian think tank the Cato Institute, said Trump supporters may be disappointed. While Trump sought to portray himself as a peacemaker and unifier, his speech was often sharply partisan. He repeated false claims from his campaign that other countries were emptying their prisons into America and voiced familiar and unfounded grievances over his criminal prosecutions.
People who voted for Trump sometimes invest this enormous hope that he will make the country completely different, that he will reverse whatever trend they're most upset about, whether it's the high number of foreign-born people or whether it's culture changing in ways that they don't approve of. And inevitably, and I must say with any president, not just Trump, a lot of those things are going to be disappointed. People get disappointed in one of the old sales pitches, and he's off to a new one, and maybe it's interesting, and maybe you want to follow his logic on it. And so even people who have been disappointed on a number of the past things, he gets the hook, like a great salesman, to intrigue them about what if this began to happen? Have you ever considered that America might, be off to new heights in this thing you've never even thought about? And before long, again, he's got their attention. He is the great attention getter.
President Trump moving swiftly to impose his will. On his first day back at the White House, Trump signed a series of executive orders, including revoking dozens of Biden-era policies. The first steps in enacting a far-reaching agenda, expanding America's territory, curbing immigration, boosting fossil fuel production, and rolling back environmental regulations.
So we're going to sign executive orders. First, I'll revoke nearly 80 destructive and radical executive actions of the previous administration, one of the worst administrations in history, maybe not one of them, the worst. Anybody that would allow millions of people to pour through our borders from jails, prisons, mental institutions, insane asylums. Next, I'm going to sign a presidential memorandum directing every member of my cabinet to marshal every power at their disposal to defeat inflation and rapidly bring down the cost of daily life, because your costs have gone through the roof in the last 4 years. Perhaps you didn't notice. Does anyone notice their costs are like double, triple, quadruple? I'm immediately withdrawing from the unfair, one-sided Paris Climate Accord ripoff. The United States will not sabotage our own industries while China pollutes with impunity. Thank you.
He also gave sweeping pardons to around 1,500 people charged in connection to the January 6th Capitol attack. He effectively erased years of efforts by federal investigators to seek accountability for the mob assault, triggered by his refusal to accept his 2020 election defeat. As a climate change denier, Trump also pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Agreement merely hours after returning to power. He also withdrew the U.S. from the World Health Organization, which he had been attacking since 2020 over its handling of the COVID pandemic. The who's who of the world's wealthiest people surrounded President Donald Trump as he took the oath of office, gathering a combined net worth exceeding $1.3 trillion for the occasion. Seated prominently behind the Trump family for Monday's swearing in were the top 3 individuals on the Bloomberg Billionaires Index: Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Mark Zuckerberg. Also spotted inside the Capitol Rotunda for the inaugural ceremony were LVMH Chief Executive Officer and France's richest man, Bernard Arnault, Alphabet Inc.'s co-founder Sergey Brin, and Las Vegas Sands Corp majority owner Miriam Adelson. The tech billionaires were seated in front of Trump's nominated cabinet, getting better seats than even the nominees, including Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who had to crane past Musk, and Alphabet CEO Sundar Pichai to watch the proceedings. Present in the crowd as well were hedge fund billionaire John Paulson, conservative media mogul Rupert Murdoch, and Apple Inc. CEO Tim Cook, who Trump said had planned an unspecified investment in the U.S. Observers tell Bloomberg support for Trump from Silicon Valley, Wall Street, and other industries signal a priority for Trump 2.0, while at stake for many of their businesses is the promise of relief from U.S. regulations and the hope of a boost to their corporate bottom lines from Trump's pledge to spur investment. Still, others are hoping to avoid the worst of the fallout from tariffs the president has vowed to use as an instrument of economic policy. Markets greeted Donald Trump's second inauguration with a sense of déjà vu on Tuesday as stocks welcomed his broad pro-business agenda. Japan's Nikkei 225, Hong Kong's Hang Seng, the benchmark South Korean Kospi, and China's Shanghai Composite all gained within the day Tuesday, but currencies remained skittish after Trump threatened tariffs within weeks. President Trump also signed an executive order delaying by 75 days the enforcement of a ban of popular short video app TikTok that was slated to be shuttered on January 19th. The short video service, used by 170 million Americans, was briefly taken offline for U.S. users on Saturday, hours before that law said it must be sold by its Chinese owner ByteDance on national security grounds took effect that day. U.S. officials had said that under ByteDance, there was a risk of Americans' data being misused. TikTok restored access on Sunday and thanked Trump for providing assurances to TikTok and its business partners that they would not face hefty fines to keep the app running. The app and website were operational Monday, but TikTok was still not available for download in the Apple and Google app stores, suggesting the two companies were waiting for clear legal assurances.
I think the U.S. should be entitled to get half of TikTok. And congratulations, TikTok has a good partner. And that would be worth, could be $500 billion or something. It's crazy. The numbers are crazy. But it's worthless if the president doesn't sign then it's worthless. If the president does sign, it's worth maybe $1 trillion. So I think, like a joint venture, I think we would have a joint venture with the people from TikTok. We'll see what happens. I mean, that's one of many ideas. Just gave me the right to sell it or close it. Essentially, with TikTok, I have the right to either sell it or close it. And we'll make that determination. And we may have to get an approval from China, too. I'm not sure. But I'm sure they'll approve it. And if they don't approve it, it would be somewhat of a hostile act, I think. But it's good for China if it gets approved.
Well, China's foreign ministry said on Monday that Beijing was willing to work with the new U.S. government to find a way to get along in the new era that will benefit both countries. The remarks were made ahead of Trump's inauguration. He made the seemingly conciliatory move of inviting Chinese President Xi Jinping to attend his inauguration on Monday. Xi sent Vice President Han Zheng in his place, a gesture of goodwill, given that China was only represented by its ambassador at the previous two U.S. presidential inaugurations.
中美合则两利。
China and the United States will benefit from cooperation and lose from confrontation, which is what the history of the development of Sino-US relations tells us. We have always believed that a stable, healthy, and sustainable Sino-US relationship is in the common interests of the two countries and the expectations of the international community. China is willing to work with the new U.S. government on the principles of mutual respect, peaceful coexistence, and win-win cooperation, strengthen dialogue and communication, properly manage differences, expand mutually beneficial cooperation, and find a correct way for China and the United States to get along in the new era, which will benefit both countries and the world.
When Trump was last president, he heaped tariffs on more than $300 billion worth of Chinese imports. In recent months, he has said he would add tariffs of at least 10% on top of what is already imposed on Chinese goods, a move that would hurt China at a time when its economy is struggling to find a firm footing. On the lighter side, a German baker distantly related to Donald Trump is selling Trump slices, pastries complete with an edible photo of the American leader. 77-year-old Ursula Trump first came up with her pastry creation on the occasion of Donald Trump's first term. The Trump slices in the colors of the American flag are a variation of a popular German cake. Her late husband related to Donald Trump in the 7th generation. Ursula said that although she was not a 100% fan of his, she would still like to see the U.S. president visit the wine-growing area of his German ancestors one day. Trump's grandfather, Friedrich Trump, emigrated to the United States in 1905 from Karlstadt, a short distance from Ursula's bakery in Freinsheim.
Ich bin damals auf die Idee gekommen, wie das erste Mal gewählt worden ist.
The Trump slices are made of Daneuel or Danube wave cake made of buttercream, chocolate, and cherries. On top is the portrait of Donald Trump with a photo. You can even eat the photo.
fand es schon super vor 8 Jahren. Deshalb finde ich es natürlich noch besser, weil
I thought it was great 8 years ago, and so I think it's even better now because Donald Trump will also make a difference in Germany. They just haven't realized that yet. I'm looking forward to every day with Trump in those 4 years, and that's why I drove here.
Naja, die Großeltern, Großmutter und Großvater väterlicherseits.
If the Chancellery gives us the task of guiding him through Karlstadt, then we are a small wine-growing village, very down-to-earth. The houses of his ancestors are quite small. They don't compare to what he has created in the United States. But I also think our church, where his grandparents were baptized, would be the places we would show him.
Business and economy news from around the country in a moment. Newsfeed Business will be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to Newsfeed Business. As Donald Trump steps into his second presidency, Joe Biden steps away from the White House with a warning against the rule of a new oligarchy and Observers form expectations of a transactional policy in international relations. BNC's Foreign Affairs Editor Jam Alindogan with this insight.
We won!
At 78, Trump is the oldest American president ever elected twice. This is also the first time since Ronald Reagan's second-term oath in 1985 that the inauguration ceremony was held inside the U.S. Capitol. Once considered a pariah for refusing to accept his loss to Joe Biden, leading to an insurrection that overran the Capitol, Trump also broke tradition by skipping Biden's inauguration. 4 years later, he has made an unprecedented comeback, winning more votes than he ever did in 2016. As for Biden, he departed Washington on Monday, wrapping up a career spanning more than half a century as senator, vice president, and president. At 82, he leaves as the oldest president in U.S. history. In his final speech, Biden highlighted his administration's achievements and issued a stark warning about the growing threat of oligarchy. It remains uncertain how domestic events in the U.S. will shape the foreign policy of Trump's administration. But Trump's unpredictability and no-nonsense negotiation style may have already influenced international developments. The Israel-Hamas ceasefire, brokered by Egypt and Qatar, has finally been implemented after stalling since May. Global relations are becoming more transactional, with ASEAN nations closely watching how to adapt to President Trump's direct approach.
The challenge for Manila would be to enhance its agency during negotiations. We would have to position Philippine national interest favorably in Trump's very transactional vision of international politics. I believe the Marcos Jr. administration recognizes this as well. And this is why we have been quick to socialize our interests and our concerns in the region through various channels. And I think that that is a very productive site. The challenge will also come from the economic front. Given Trump's focus on burden sharing and his dislike for asymmetric economic relations. Many in our neighborhoods, such as Vietnam, Malaysia, and Indonesia, who have benefited greatly from the U.S.-China trade war, are also concerned now, given that they may need to do more in order to leverage that economic momentum. The Philippines trails a little behind our immediate neighbors in terms of our investment climate, right? But we are currently working on that, and I believe that this sort of challenge would be productive as well for us to leverage what we can on the economic front. But of course, when they talked about not supposedly being complacent, this also means that we must also continue our multi-aligned approach. We continue working with other like-minded partners, given, of course, that we are aware of the worries that many sectors have in the country, particularly the strategic institutions, regarding, of course, the potential for immediate shocks derived from immediate decisions that may be taken in Washington under Trump 2.0, which may have, of course, an impact on Philippine national security calculations.
His administration is expected to revive the Indo-Pacific strategy, which seeks to counter China's influence by strengthening regional alliance. This strategy will likely benefit the Philippines and Vietnam. Both countries are leading the opposition against China's expansive 9-line claims in the South China Sea. For now, the Philippines and Vietnam stand to gain the most from Trump's hawkish policies on China.
A second Trump presidency, no matter its approach, is expected to remain anchored on America First interests. For countries like the Philippines and Southeast Asia, this could be a pivotal moment, a chance to veer away from the great power competition between the U.S. and China and to veer towards a more independent foreign policy, and one that can endure no matter who sits in Washington. Jamela Alindogan, BNC.
Meanwhile, Finance Secretary Ralph Recto is representing President Bongbong Marcos at the high-stakes World Economic Forum in Switzerland. As the president's special envoy, Recto is meeting with top business leaders and investors to position the Philippines as a major destination for foreign capital. The Department of Finance says the focus is on securing investments in high-impact industries that can create jobs, boost wages, and drive long-term economic growth. The 2025 World Economic Forum annual meetings began in Davos with a call for global cooperation amid global uncertainty. Themed Collaboration for the Intelligent Age, the 5-day event brings together nearly 3,000 participants from various regions and industries to discuss issues across 5 pivotal areas: reimagining growth, industries in the intelligent age, investing in people, safeguarding the planet, and rebuilding trust.
If you look at the growth in renewable sector, solar, in batteries, electrical vehicles, these are really strong foundational points.
Meanwhile, NGO Oxfam reports last year marked the second largest annual increase in billionaire wealth since records started. The global charity now predicts at least 5 trillionaires within a decade. Billionaire wealth surged in 2024 as the world's richest people increasingly benefited from inheritance and powerful connections. According to Oxfam's latest annual inequality report, the combined wealth of the world's most wealthy rose from $13 trillion to $15 trillion in just 12 months. It marks the second largest annual increase in billionaire wealth since Oxfam records started. Meanwhile, the number of people living in poverty has barely changed since 1990. The charity cited World Bank data showing the richest 1% of people own nearly 45% of all wealth, while 44% of humanity are living below the World Bank poverty line of $6.85 a day. Oxfam is urging governments to commit to ensuring that the incomes of the top 10% are no higher than the bottom 40% worldwide. Philippine shares dipped for a second straight day in muted reaction to U.S. President Donald Trump's inauguration. The PS index was down by 0.1%, closing at 6340, not the worst performer in Asia. Majority of sectoral indices ended in the red, with mining and oil declining the most at more than 2%. Decliners also outpaced advancers, 104 to 76. Total value turnover stood at 3.9 billion pesos. Today's most active stocks ended mixed. Converge had the biggest gain, rising at almost 3%. Universal Robina, meanwhile, declined the most, falling at 4%. Also on Tuesday, the peso slightly weakened to 58.46 against the U.S. dollar, amid bets that Trump's tariff plans would spur inflation and prevent further interest rate cuts from the U.S. Federal Reserve. And that's a wrap for today's Newsfeed Business. Thank you for making us your daily source of financial insights. I'm Raine Musñgi. Join us again tomorrow as we bring you the stories that help you plan your next big, bold moves in business, only here on the Bilyonaryo News channel, always on top. Follow the Money is next at 4:30.